Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now to speak on creating the future of Nigeria is Pastor Ituah Ighodalo. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to start off by asking you, what is the role of the church in nation building and what should it be? Because a lot of people feel that the clergy should really stay out of discussing politics at the pulpit. What do you say to that?
Well, the church has always been the conscience of the nation, the bastion of society, the role model and the ethical thinker, and always advisor to the king. You know what the scripture says, that the hand of the prophet is usually on top of the hand of the king. So the church should first of all teach its people how to live right, how to be good citizens, how to be good people, how to do the appropriate things. It should encourage them to aspire to leadership, and then it should make sure that they have the ears of the king or the president or the governor so that they can hear from God and tell the governor or the president what the Lord is saying, and then be there to productively criticize where there's room for that. It was the church that saved King David from destroying himself and Israel because they spoke out at the right time. So the church needs to speak out constructively and give good advice.
So you don't see anything wrong with a pastor being a president of Nigeria?
Absolutely not.
So what would happen to his position in the church after he becomes president?
Well, you get lawyers that become presidents, you get accountants that become presidents, you get soldiers that become presidents. So he does his tenure, does his role, and if he wants, goes back to his other duties. So that's how it is. So Bill Clinton was doing something, became president, and went back. Okay, Donald Trump is president today. I'm sure he'll go back to Trump Towers in another few years' time.
And in our present political climate, it wouldn't be out of place to ask if you have any political inclinations or aspirations.
Well, that's a very, very good question. I am politically involved. I am very interested in Nigeria. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm extremely passionate about Nigeria. I'm not going to shy away from leadership if it's offered to me, simply because I think we can make Nigeria great again.
You say offered to you, so you wouldn't go out there to actually vie for an office, but if you were given a political appointment, you would take that up. Is that what you say?
Well, I might consider vying for office when the time is right, and if I think the signs are good, I might seriously consider it. Okay, but it's not anything I'm going to pull any teeth about, because I really want to serve. I have no ulterior motive. I have no personal interest. I want to serve Nigeria and make sure that Nigeria is where it should be. That's my intention.
In responding to Tunu's question earlier, you made a statement and used the word constructively. There's nothing wrong in the church participating in politics constructively or criticizing. Would you say that the church in Nigeria has been constructive, of government policies, programs to the people? Have they been involved in a constructive manner to bring about the changes someone like yourself has been pushing for?
To be honest, not sufficiently. In the church today, you have extremes. And most of the time, you are not sure whether it's constructive or it's a personal issue that they're trying to deal with. And that's very difficult. That's one of the challenges of Nigeria, where people cannot separate their own personal desires from the good of all. Nigeria is like an orphan. Not very many people really like Nigeria for what Nigeria is. Not very many people want to offer themselves as sacrifice for this nation. Not very many people are interested in the common good. So most people are pursuing their personal interests. So in the church, you have about 3 different kinds of people. Number one, those who side with the government of the day for whatever reason, okay? Then there are those who are a bit vitriolic, a little bit vitriolic in their criticisms. Again, you are not sure what the real agenda is. And most of the church is on the fence, a little bit silent and just waiting and watching. We can't continue like that. You must have a church that's above board, that's very altruistic, that's very, very focused on the people and the nation, and ready to speak the truth. You must be able to speak truth to power. Once you get into a position where you're not able to do that, then that's a serious problem. You must hear from God And God is impassionate, God is not partial, God is very fair, and God is more interested in the overall common good.
Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury wrote a book sort of trying to give a roadmap of the values that he would like to see in the UK in the next few months and, well, few years. Looking at Nigeria, how would you characterize our future? And if you were to write such a book, what values, as well as measures, because you're more than a pastor, you have governance experience and exposure, what values and measures do you think we need to apply for the future of Nigeria?
First of all, Nigeria has extremely great potential. We have all the boxes that need to be ticked. We have the people, extremely intelligent people, competent, hardworking. Anywhere you go in the world, you'll find a Nigerian that's making their way and making their own anywhere in the world that you go. Number two, we have the resource, not just oil. You have at least 32 other minerals that are almost as valuable as oil. You have agriculture, you have land mass, you have water, you have everything. What is missing, or what has been missing, is the right tone at the top, the right kind of leadership. Now, there's some values that never fail. Some values that never fail. And once you've built an institution, if the institution is going to survive, those values must be in place. Honesty and truth never fails. There's no alternative to it in the long run. Hard work never fails, okay? Sincerity never fails. Being fair to one another, okay? That's what the church was like, being fair to one another, creating opportunity. It never, never fails, okay? So these values never, ever fails. Rule of law, okay? This is the rules, these are the laws. Everybody must abide, also never fails. A search for the best person for the best job also will never fail if you have the right person in the right place, regardless of tribe or ethnicity. You know, when you start having things like what do you call this thing? Federal character and all that. It's just an attempt to share federal cake. Okay, what you're saying is that somebody must come from here because it's our turn to have access to position or resource or authority. You are not looking for the best person who will think for the common good to do that job. So that's what it is, okay? And if the person is fair and truthful, there should be no oppression of anybody. As a matter of fact, you should go and watch out for the oppressed to lift them up, regardless of where they come from. We're first of all Nigerians before we're tribal people. But in Nigeria, you're first of all from a tribe or from a compound or from a home before you're a Nigerian.
In other words, a system based on the lack of merit is what you're against.
Absolutely.
But the reason why we have that federal character in the Constitution is the lack of trust. People, we all know the standard and what people ought to do, but for fear that they won't and they'll end up marginalizing certain tribes, that's why this occurs, and we have the mediocrity that we have to contend with. But where do you stand? Because, okay, if you're against federal character, you need a constitutional amendment. Are you also looking for a constitutional amendment regarding restructuring, for example?
Yes, I think the nation truly should be restructured. I think restructuring in as far as we allow every local area to develop their local capacity, take a part of what they have developed, put a part in the federal purse so that there's some kind of even distribution. So if I'm having mangoes in my backyard, let me have 50, 60% of those mangoes. Let me contribute 20, 30% to the common purse, okay? And let another 10, 20% go to whatever you want, okay? But let me be able to use the resources from my backyard to develop my backyard. You understand what I'm saying? And then this thing. Otherwise, let everything go to the common purse and let it be properly allocated according to some truthful formula, either need or population or land mass, okay? So it's either you're going to have a completely socialist system or you're going to have a combination of some kind of capitalism plus some kind of fairness, okay? But the most important thing about restructuring is that we must develop all our resources. Why we're afraid of restructuring now is that everybody is oil dependent. People are afraid that if you pronounce that everybody should go back to their resource, some people won't have anything and others will have everything, okay? That's really the fear. But if we can say, you know what, let's have a graduated restructuring, okay? Now we are having 70-30. Next year it will be 60-40. The year after it will be 50-50. The year after it will be 40-60, okay? So that everybody can plan and go back and look at what they have in their backyard and bring it up. Very soon, everything will have some kind of balance. And then we can trade amongst ourselves, okay? You have so much of this, give me this, I give you this in exchange, or big brother, help me to develop my area so that I can also come up like you. So let's have a very good balance, and let's have an equitable sharing formula, and everybody will be at peace. But because of where we are now, let's not shock the system. Let's graduate it. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. All I know is that every part of Nigeria has capacity. And this is working in America. In California, you have your agriculture, and you do it. In Texas, you have your oil. In New York, you have your businesses and your ports. Everybody has what they have and what they can bring to the table. And that's how God created the earth.
Okay, so you just mentioned that we need the right kind of leadership in Nigeria, and pertaining to rule of law. You know, last month you at you gave a keynote speech on electoral irregularities, right? And you said that one of the values that makes a nation great is the obedience of rule of law. Now that we have all these controversies with the CJN's suspension, how would you assess the federal government's commitment to the rule of law?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the timing seems a little bit, if you like, suspect, and this is where the issues are. But the truth of the matter is that the CJN was found, I believe, with assets that he had not declared. That is a fact. There's nothing anybody can do about that. Now, what does the law of Nigeria say when your chief law officer has not declared his assets? There's, I believe, some judicial tribunal that must sit, okay? So you must kick in that process according to the laws of the nation. The controversy now is, does the president have a right to suspend the CJN while that process is going on? Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what the law says, but if he does have the right, then he's done his job. If he doesn't have the right, he's controverted the procedure. So maybe somebody's a lawyer can advise, okay? But this is it. You must follow the process, and everybody must be given fair hearing and fair trial. But now it's all politicized because of the timing, because people think that is a southerner, they want to put a northerner in there, they want to control the, what you may call the electoral process, blah, 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 this and that. Well, that is debatable, but they are facts, okay? And if you are smart enough to bring in facts at a timing that's suitable for you, that's being a bit smart, if you ask me, okay? But the issue is that, was the CJN culpable, and did he declare or not declare his assets? Let's deal with that. Yeah. Then what is the process? Let us follow the process and not short-circuit that process.
But it's not just the issue of the CJN. There are so many issues in terms of rule of law with the federal government, you know, averting court orders and all of that. I just want to know what your assessment is with what they've been through so far for the past 3.5 years.
The truth of the matter is that I don't have all the details, I'll be truthful, but I do think that in some circumstances, like every typical politician, the government has taken political advantage in some areas. For instance, the types of numbers of people they have suddenly gotten the EFCC to go after. You know, it's very, very controversial. One day the EFCC is after somebody, the next day he declares for a certain party, and thereafter everybody goes quiet. Or then the cases are adjourned, the cases are adjourned, the cases are adjourned. There's a lot of politics going on. And I think the federal government is not shy of using their political weight here and there to persuade people to come to their side. I think that's a nice way of putting it. But the truth of the matter is that they are not shy of using their political will to persuade people or discourage people or encourage people one way or the other. These are the weaknesses of the human flesh. We're all a bit weak. But if we have a right society that speaks positively against these things, the society will begin to correct itself. One of the problems that we have is that we have not sufficiently allowed Nigeria to truly correct itself. And this is part of the process, you know. Society becomes perfect through reiterations of certain processes, and that's where we are.
And in trying to correct ourselves as a country, you have a personal relationship with the country's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and in trying to solve some of the challenges of the country, you formed what you called the Trinity Accord, didn't you? Tell us what that is about, and if you have been able to implement anything in that accord.
Where did you get that from?
I got it from somewhere.
Well, Professor Osinbajo and myself are very, very good friends. We're brothers. We've been together for many years, okay? We were together as students. We were together in the church. We worked together in the church. And when Nigeria was going through all the challenges and difficulties and all that, we always engaged in conversations as to what can we do, how can we do it. And almost on a weekly basis, he was in my house or in my office, or we met up in one location or the other to discuss the Nigerian issue. At the time, a guy called Kamela Okara joined us, who is also a friend of ours, and we used to meet in my house. And my house is called the Trinity. And as we discussed and we came up with roadmaps, we then said, this is the Trinity Accord, part of which I think he's using right now in trying to do the things that he's doing in government. And from time to time, I remind him, I say, Yemi, Trinity Accord, and he smiles. And we're very concerned about Nigeria. We're very concerned about the rule of law. You know, he used to run a foundation called Justice or something, Peace for Justice or something like that. And we really want a Nigeria that there will be fair game, fair play, rule of law, and things like that. Okay.
Did you advise restructuring in that Trinity Accord?
We discussed it, but not in detail, because that wasn't the topical issue at the time. The topical issue was just, in fact, getting the right people in the right place. That's what Nigeria has been bleeding from. How do we get the right people and the right team in the right place, doing the right thing for Nigeria? And I'm sure along the line, restructuring would have come into place.
Well, it's barely a week to the elections. You've talked about right leadership repeatedly in the course of this program already. We have about 71 presidential candidates going into this election. Do you think that Nigerians finally have an opportunity to change the status quo, to get the kind of leadership you're talking about?
I think the challenge we have is that a lot of us are a little bit flat-footed and we don't think in advance, okay? We had 4 years to put in a system and to really begin to have a system that will throw up the right kind of leadership. We had 4 years to plan, but for most of those 4 years, people just went to sleep or they went to look for daily bread or what they would eat, and then 365 days to election, people suddenly wake up and suddenly you want to become president. You don't wake up 365 days to a voting process of 180 million people and you want to be president overnight, okay? So we have not really thought deeply about putting in the system that will throw up good leadership, and that's what I want to personally work on now. What happened, of course, you know, my relationship with the present government and Professor Yemi Osinbajo in particular, and I said to myself, let's give this government some time. Let's see what they're going to do, okay? But in the process, a lot of people sort of fell asleep here and there, and nobody really rose up in time to say, what are we going to do? But now, people need to think a little bit far in advance and begin to put in a process that will, first of all, encourage the right kind of people to go into politics and leadership, you know? And if you are the right kind of person, it might be challenging for you because you may not have the resource. You've not been corrupt, you've not stolen money, you've not made money just anyhow, you've struggled through and so on and so forth. But if you plan well and you're able to engage the people, you know, one of the things we don't do enough of is engaging the people. The second thing is that people are so ignorant, they're not well educated. We first of all need to have a system where we actually educate and inform people right from wrong, good from bad, what their rights are, and what a good vote will do for them. And then thereafter, engage them, find out what their problems are, find out what their challenges are, find out what kind of Nigeria they want, find out how they want to benefit from this Nigeria, and so on and so forth. And then come up with a plan that people can understand, simple, easy, straightforward. You know, Nigerians' problems are not rocket science, you know. They're not. Everybody knows them, but nobody is sincere enough to want to see them to the end.
Well, you admit that you're very close to the Vice President. He has received knocks for the trader money scheme of this administration. People say he has debased the office and himself for being the face of that scheme, taking 10,000 naira to traders to improve their trade. Have you had a word with the Vice President on the trader money issue? And there are those who also think that this is a vote-buying method or scheme. What's your take on it?
Well, I've not had a personal word with him on the trader money, but I can tell you for a fact that the idea of trader money was long before this electioneering process started. I think it started right as soon as he got into office. This was one of the things he wanted to do, to ensure that he could put some sums of money into the hands of little artisans and to recreate and regenerate. It was something he had been doing a little bit before on a small scale, okay? And it's something I had been doing also. So it's something that has its antecedents even before he got into office. So it's very, very quick for him to get off the block. And he's been working on it, and he's been doing it, okay? The only challenge I have was that we should have a much more systemic approach and sustainable approach to it, okay? There should be some organization, well-structured, like the People's Bank or whatever it is, that has statistics of these people, gives them the money, tracks them, see the value that they add. But now that politics has started and they seem to be hyping it up, it now looks like some kind of patronage thing and all that. I think the timing again of the hyping of that process was slightly wrong. But the thought and the thinking behind it was truly sincere at the initial stage. Okay, and that's my opinion.
Conceptualized a long time ago.
Long time ago. Even before he got into office. It's something that was in the minds, in his mind, you know. Even before he got into office, it was one of the things that he decided to do. It was supposed to be an experiment initially, okay, to see how it will go. And then it started going well. People started benefiting from it. And they began to hype it up a little bit, okay.
Now, what restructuring is today in terms of a buzzword is what privatization was in '99 under former President Obasanjo's administration, not regime. Freudian slip there. So you work on the National Council of Privatization. How would you score Nigeria's efforts to take Nigerian interests or entities out of the federal government's hands and make them more profitable? There's been a lot of criticism, especially with the power sector, that the privatization of the power sector has not worked. And what is the future of privatization in Nigeria? We have the main opposition candidate, Ituah Ighodalo, as one of his main points on his manifesto is to privatize NNPC. What is your view on all these?
Well, the less government you have running business in any country, the best. You know, Margaret Thatcher did a lot of privatization of things that were hitherto untouchable in UK, the railways, the airlines, and a few of the airports, okay? She went aggressively and then made schools even more sustainable. She was called the milk snatcher because she took milk out of the mouths of, well, seemingly. But she just wanted a more efficient society, okay? Where there's government, the tendency and the government thinking, government is more a policy-making organization and not an implementer. You cannot be the player and the referee at the same time, okay? And where there's government in something, people tend to think this is cake to be shared. What government needs to do is to be the trigger, the catalyst of bringing development, pointing the people in the direction, and unleashing that development potential to the people. So privatization was an excellent idea. Again, like most things in Nigeria, politics came in, personal issues came in. Even the same Vice President Ituah Ighodalo was supposed to have benefited from the first round, as it were, of privatization and so on and so forth, okay? So the politics came in and everything. Some of the things were not properly done. So there's some of the efforts that would have been good. We did very well with the telecoms. We haven't done so well with power, okay? Because the people didn't think through power very well. They thought power was like telecoms that made it almost an overnight success. But power is a little bit more fundamental than that. The laws were not right. The MITOs were not right. NERC didn't get their act together in time. The cost of power was a challenge to the entire system. Should it be $10 or 10 cents per kilowatt, or should it be 14 cents? We've had challenges with that, okay? And that's why power is bleeding a little bit. But I still think that privatization, all in all, has done well for this country, brought in more people into the fray. You don't get everything right on the first block, and it's recorrecting itself. People like SACO was brilliant. Privatization effort is done very, very well. A few other entities have done well. Even the power, okay, there's been some marked improvement, a little bit here and there in power. In that, a lot more people are getting involved, and it's correcting itself. As to NNPC, it needs to be restructured. I really think so. I think we should differentiate the policy making from the running of an NPC. We should follow the LNG model. LNG has been extremely successful. It's partially owned by government and is owned also by some of the IOCs. So we can take out NNPC in blocks like that. But then again, let's do it transparently. Let's do it over time. Let the rules be clear, if that is possible, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, so in terms of the elections, how would you rate INEC's readiness to conduct a violent-free election, given that the recent inference by some political party to actually induce violence with foreign observers as well?
That's a very interesting comment by my friend Nasir. He's also my friend. I think he shouldn't have made that comment in that way. The threat of wanting Nigeria's independence, I agree with, but suggesting that people will go back in body bags, I think, was a little bit of a challenge from him. I guess he was just a bit emotional at that point in time, wanting to emphasize that Nigeria can take care of itself, okay? But having said that, INEC, I think, is prepared in terms of technicality and structure. I have the privilege of knowing one or two people in INEC. I've spoken to them, and they've told me that, first of all, Jega left a very good base, which they've built on. They're very, very technologically driven. They have all their scoreboards, electronics, this and that. But it's not quite their job to prevent violence. Their job is to run the elections, okay? Now, you have all the other agencies, the police, the army, and so on and so forth, to make sure that the place is violence-free. And I do think that there'll be a peaceful election. I really think so. I think God is going to shame the devil and make this, this election peaceful.
Well, there's been a death in our educational system, and thankfully, ASU has finally reached an agreement with the federal government and called off their 3-month-old strike. What's your take on this continuous intermittent strikes by ASU? What's the impact that it has on our educational system and the resultant effect on our youth?
The impact is very, very obvious. You know, people get into school at 18. They don't know when they're going to get out. And the society is driven on planning and predictability. You know, I pastor a church. I sponsor many children to school. A few of my children right now are at home doing nothing, getting involved in things they shouldn't get involved in, getting frustrated, getting tired. I get text messages almost every day that ASU still hasn't called off this strike. What do we do with our children? And that is a challenge for parents. Somebody who should graduate at 21 is leaving school at 25. How are they going to start in the labor market, and so on and so forth? Then you are not sure of the degree that they have gotten. Again, we should get government a little bit more out of education. As a matter of fact, I think that our educational institutions and some of our hospitals should be privatized or partially privatized to make them a lot more efficient. And if we can't run them here, we can get people who have the knowledge. We need to buy, import, bring in a bit more knowledge into Nigeria and make sure that, make sure things work. Okay, so the lecturers, they are frustrated, they're not well paid, they're not encouraged, they're not well rewarded, the atmosphere is tense and everything. So from time to time, they go on strike. But if most of these things were privately driven, even the federal schools should be privatized. I don't see why the federal government is managing 126 schools and not managing any one of them very well.
And yet creating more.
I mean, I don't see why. You know, St. Gregory's College over there is a typical example. When the government took it over, it went down. It's now gone back to the former owners and the old boys, and they've totally transformed it, okay? Right now, I'm working on King's College with a group of my old boys, and it's an uphill challenge. It's going to cost us over 6 billion naira to transform King's College. The infrastructure is down, the classes are dirty. The school that should take 600 has about 4,000 people inside of it. The health conditions are unbearable. The teachers are not well paid. They're not motivated. It's unbearable. We should hand these schools back to the old boys or to some foundation or to somebody who is interested in running the school. If we now want to subsidize those people so that the fees can be affordable, we can work that out, okay? So your fees are 100,000. Government will pay you 50 out of that 100. You charge the people 50. We work it out. The government backs out. The cost to them of running education is very much reduced, is very predictable, very practical, and they challenge the people to run the schools well, okay? And so on and so forth. This is really what government should be doing. And then bit by bit, they get out completely and set up trusts or foundations to bring the cost of education down. Or they set up some kind of grant system or loan system that you have in UK and America, which again I'm working on with a company called CHAMS, to try and see how we can set up some kind of loan system where students can take the loan, pay the right amount for school, graduate, and then pay off the loan over their working life. You know, society has to correct itself, be sustainable and efficient.
Well, talking about children, one can see how passionate you are. But again, your family was brought to limelight on that issue with your beautiful wife, and because you do not have biological children of your own, but you have adopted. Many have drawn inspiration from that situation. What sort of pressure does childbearing have on a Nigerian couple? I mean, you are a pastor, and Nigerian being the country, it says very religious. People believe, you know, children are gifts from God, you have to wait on God, and if it's not happening, then God is not making it happen. How were you able to hold on and become an inspiration to so many people?
Thank you very much. A lot of people you cannot really fathom or understand God. And God creates every situation so that ultimately a benefit will come out of it. He puts Joseph in prison, hides him there. That's where he connects with his destiny and becomes governor. Okay? In the Bible, there was a guy called Zechariah who waited on God for many years. As a matter of fact, by the time God responded to him, he was past childbearing. Abraham, the same thing. But the gifts that God gave them were extraordinary gifts, okay? And even Moses was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, who brought him up in her palace to teach him the ways of Egypt so that one day he could set the Israelites free. So we cannot fathom how God works and his dynamics. So God has made it possible for myself and my wife to experience certain delays in bringing forth children biologically. 3 things I did. Number 1, no pressure. Absolutely no pressure. I didn't marry you because of children. I married you because I loved you, and I will love you to the very end. So that's the first example that I lay as a pastor. Number 2, nothing wrong with adopting. Guess what? Jesus was adopted, okay? He was adopted by Joseph, okay? And born of the Holy Ghost. That's what the Bible teaches us. And quite a few children like that were adopted all over the place. And a child is a child is a child. We must break that stigma and that stigmatization of biology. It's all in the mind. It's all a little bit psychological, okay? And it's all proving that I am fertile because God has said there shall be no barren in the land. Yes, that's true. There shall be no barren in the land, but there are different ways of making a person productive, okay? And God has made us very productive. We have 2 beautiful children. When I look at my son, I couldn't wish for a better son. Even if God was going to give me something, he couldn't have done better for me. When I look at my daughter, she looks just like me, and a cross between my wife and I, and her toes look like my father's toes. So what more can I ask God for? It's unbelievable. And we just wanted to break the ceiling and say there are many ways by which God can do what he needs to do. Yeah. And if we break that, there are children out there looking for loving parents, okay, for one reason or the other. So even if you have your own biological children, I would still encourage you, if you have the space, to make a home for a child. So we should break all those things and let's just move forward and create a right atmosphere for everybody to thrive.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for...
No, sorry. This one just referred to the fact that Nigerians are quite religious. So why is it that our country is in such dire straits? Yeah. Countries like Israel, where only 30%, ironically Israel, 30% of people from Israel claim to be religious, are so prosperous. China, even less religious than that, and they've just flying in leaps and bounds. And while we are ranking so low on every indices of development, what is the problem?
Well, there are 2 issues to look at, and we need to also look at a bit of history. Okay, religion does 3 or 4 things. Points you in the right direction of things to do. 2, gets God to do what you cannot do. I was telling a young fellow yesterday that success in life is based on a partnership with God. There are things that you can do. I can wake up, I can wear my jacket, I can come here, okay? But I couldn't control that I was going to sit with 3 wonderful ladies today, or 4 wonderful ladies, I beg your pardon, okay? So it is God that makes this connection, and somehow anything can come out of this meeting, okay? You understand what I'm saying? So God does for you what you cannot do for yourself, but you have to do for yourself what you need to do for yourself to ensure that when God creates the environment, you are there to take it. What happens to China is that they're doing for themselves what they need to do for themselves, and God creates the opportunity for them regardless of the fact that they're not religious, okay? And I like the word religious, not relationship with God. Religion is a practice, okay? Sometimes it's lip service. It's not of the heart. God looks at the heart. What's going on in your heart, regardless of what you profess with your mouth. So a lot of people are religious, but they're not sincere. And most people in Nigeria have dual religions. They go to Babalawo at night. They go to church in the morning. Believe me sincerely, I'm a pastor. I see it. They go to mountains all over the place. They go to all sorts of things because Nigerians are so desperate to succeed. They're so gullible. They're willing to believe anybody. Small little boy calls himself a prophet and has a bit of psychology, tells you that, there's a woman doing you. Who will look at me and not know that there must be a woman somewhere trying to, or there's a man after you. Yeah, there must be some man somewhere. You understand? So a lot of people are religious, but they're not sincere. But then again, Nigeria is work in progress, okay? We are coming from history of sincere and serious idol worship. I'm doing a teaching in church right now, calling Dealing with the Foundations. You have a foundation of deep idol worship. It's going to take you a few years to get out of it. So we're still a little bit of work in progress. But the bottom line is that thank God that people are praying, because things could sincerely have been worse. You know, a lot of the churches, they've been shock absorbers for a lot of the things that government has failed in. I know how many people we look after in my church. Pay school fees, give free medical, kids pay rent, do this, do that. Give hope, you know? Just common hope that things are going to be okay. God is in control. Keeps a man going. A guy left Abuja, came to look for me in Lagos because he had lost all hope. So I sat him down, put him in a hotel, cleaned him up, started praying for him, and now I'm looking for a job for him. That's what we're doing, okay? So we create hope, we create environment, and it's work in progress. It's going to take time. you know, for all things to happen. What Japan, Singapore...
We're going to have to leave it now. It's been really inspirational, turning great ideas and simplifying them for us. Pastor Ituah Ighodalo, pastor, accountant, thinker, and social reformer. Thank you for joining us on The Morning Show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.